You've probably heard that some conference expenses can be deducted through your PC, but not all. So, what can your PC actually deduct? Let's talk about it. Short answer, most conference expenses are deductible, but the rules differ depending on the type of expense and also the nature of the event. And we'll walk through all of that today. One quick thing before we get into the rules, you might call them conferences. The Tax Act and CRA's published guidance calls them conventions. So when I use the word convention in this video, that's why. But we're all talking about the same thing. So let's start with the general test for whether something is deductible at all. An expense is deductible if it was incurred for the purpose of earning income from your business. That's the starting point. For a physician PC, that means there needs to be a real connection to your medical practice. It could be clinical, practice management, billing, compliance, EMR, leadership. The test is the connection to your practice, not the topic of the offering. And it needs to be incurred by your corporation. Direct payment by the PC is always going to be the cleanest, but a properly documented reimbursement also works. The key is that the corporation actually bears the cost. Now, here's a rule that many people miss. Your PC can deduct a maximum of 2 conventions per year. Yes, conventions are capped at 2, but courses are not. That distinction is a very important one, so let's explain how to tell which one you're dealing with. So how do you tell whether something is a convention or a course? A convention is a gathering. The purpose is people coming together to share information, network, and be exposed to current thinking in their field. Royal College conferences, family medicine forums, specialty society annual meetings, these are all conventions. A course is structured instruction. The purpose is teaching specific material to attendees, so skills workshops, simulation labs, and of course, focused CME courses with a defined curriculum. These are all courses. And here's the part most people miss. CME credit can be attached to both. So whether something has CME credit doesn't necessarily tell you which bucket it's in. The structure of the offering does. Now, I don't want you to blindly trust me or any other accountant for that matter. So let's take a look at where these rules come from. So the Income Tax Act itself sets the 2 convention cap. It also requires that the convention be held by a business or professional organization, that your attendance be connected to your practice, and that the location be consistent with where the organization operates. One thing that is worth knowing, you don't actually need to be a member of the sponsoring organization. Your attendance just has to be connected to your practice. And the Income Tax Act as well, under 67.1, it's the meals rule. So food, beverages, and entertainment are limited to 50% of the cost. There's also a specific provision for when conference fees bundle meals into the registration without breaking them up separately. I will come back to that. And on the convention versus course distinction, that's CRA's published administrative guidance, including their archive training, expense interpretation bulletin, and technical responses. Courses fall under the general deductibility rule, not the convention cap. Now, let me address something that comes up a lot. Specialized CME courses outside Canada. Maybe somewhere warm like Hawaii, or nice like Disney World. The question is always, is that deductible? And the answer, if the offering is structurally a course with structured instruction and a defined curriculum, then it's a course, not a convention. Territorial scope is a convention rule. It doesn't apply to courses in the same way. But the connection to your practice has to be real. If you're in a narrow subspecialty, then of course you'll often have to travel for legitimate training that simply isn't available in Canada. That fact pattern can absolutely support deductibility. And you'll need documentation too. The course outline, the receipts, evidence that the training applies to your practice. Get those all right. The costs are reasonable in the circumstances, and any personal portion is carved out. And yes, something like a course in Hawaii or even Disney World could be a legitimate deduction. Now, the flip side, the things I hear that sometimes lead to trouble. I attended a conference that gives me CME, so it's deductible. Maybe. The CME label by itself doesn't determine the bucket. A convention with CME credit attached is still a convention. And a convention held outside the organizing body's territorial scope can still fail the Section 2010 test in the Income Tax Act. So, not to get too technical, but there's one narrow exception worth knowing. If a sponsoring organization is a national Canadian body, then Canada US Treaty can allow a US convention to be treated as if it were held in Canada for this purpose. So, a national Canadian organization holding its annual meeting in the US may still qualify. A provincial body holding a meeting in Hawaii does sadly not fit that exception. So, the activity itself is the test. The structure, the purpose, the location, the connection to your practice, not necessarily what's printed on your badge or brochure. So, what can actually happen when this goes wrong and CRA looks at it? First, the deduction at the corporate level may be denied or reduced, either because the expense isn't really tied to your practice, or because the amount isn't reasonable in the circumstances, or because the convention rules weren't met. Reasonableness is a real test. A modest course in a modest location reads very differently than the same course overseas, bundled with a week at an all-inclusive resort. Second, the amount may be a taxable benefit to you personally, either as an employee or as a shareholder. This could be for something like airfare for your spouse, or if you're tacking on an extra week of accommodations so you can have a vacation, or if your trip itself really has no business connection. These are the kind of items that can flip from corporate deduction to personal income. And if this happens, it can be twice as painful, since you can lose the corporate deduction, but also get taxed personally on the same amount. Full disclosure, this is the potential downside. And as with anything, it's up to CRA's discretion, so it's not automatic. But the downside exposure is real, and it is worth knowing about. Now, on to meals. Even when the conference is legitimate, the meals piece has its own rule. Direct meal costs, the dinners and lunches you pay for separately while you're at a conference, they're limited to 50%. This is because CRA assumes there's some element of personal benefit or enjoyment there. Bundled meals get caught as well, where the conference fee includes food, beverages, or entertainment, and a reasonable portion isn't separately identified. Subsection 67.1 deems $50 per day or another prescribed amount to have been paid for those items other than incidental refreshments. We're talking coffee at the back of the room or something like that. That deemed amount then gets the 50% haircut. So even your all-inclusive conference fee doesn't necessarily deduct at full value. Most people don't know this, miss it completely, and this is one of those items which consistently gets missed between bookkeeping and tax filing, since tax filing will generally take your books at face value. Now, the practical mechanics of how convention expenses would get calculated and recorded between personal use and business use portions, disposal or family expenses, meals, other transportation, that's all its own video for another day. So, what is the cleaner path? I'll err on the conservative side here. Your situation may differ. This is a general recommendation without knowing the facts of your case. But pick your 2 conventions for the year deliberately. Count them. If you're attending 3, you're already past the cap, so plan accordingly. Have your PC pay registration, travel, and lodging directly. Keep the agenda or program with your records. The documentation piece is where a lot of these deductions get won or lost. And apply the meals haircut. Half on direct meal costs, and don't put spouse travel or tacked on vacation days through your PC unless you can clearly justify them. And on courses, the approach is a little more straightforward. Run all of them through the PC. There's no cap on the number of CME courses your corporation can deduct in a year. Keep the course outline. And all receipts. If CRA ever asks, you want to be able to show what was taught and why it qualifies as a structured instruction rather than a convention. And also, tie it to your practice. This is about staying current in what you already do, not going back to school for a new specialty. In a situation like that, it's treated differently. But yeah, if the connection to your existing practice is real, the location is really incidental. A specialized course in another country on a topic relevant to what you do clinically can be a legitimate deduction. The costs just have to be reasonable, and any personal portion has to be carved out. Now, a couple of things that people often miss with conferences and CME and business travel deductions overall. Yes, the AGM. Your corporation is required to hold an annual general meeting. The costs of holding it, including travel by directors and shareholders to attend, can be deductible. And those costs aren't subject to the 2 convention cap because the AGM isn't a convention, it's corporate business. The meeting actually has to happen every year, and your minute book should reflect it. But yes, as with anything, yeah, the costs have to be reasonable for the size of your corporation. But within those guardrails, this is a separate deduction lane that gets very often overlooked. It's also definitely its own video. I will get to it. But for now, just know that it exists. And secondly, yeah, there's a whole set of mechanics questions that this video doesn't cover. How do you split a mixed personal and business trip? What you can and can't run through the PC when you have spouses or family members traveling? The detailed math on the meals haircut. Uh, those are all those all belong in their own video, and I'm working on it. All right, let's wrap up. In summary, yeah, 2 conventions per year. That is the cap. Courses are different. There's no cap on those. If you have any follow-up questions, please let me know in the comments. Thank you, and I will talk to you soon.